Everybody, just picking up where I left off in the last video, I've got a couple of upgrades to this scene. Number one, kind of putting the Statue of Liberty in here and an alien building. And, you know, just kind of trying to keep these videos a little short. And then I did the render, and I'm pretty happy with it. Obviously, there's 101 different things you could do to this still. Putting glass in there and texture in it. I don't know what it is, but the slightly untextured building just looks good to me. I don't know. It just looks good. But anyhow, I got an old beat up concrete here, and I used the Ivy generator for the Statue of Liberty. And so I'm going to show you guys how to do that if you don't know. And I know we've got the Bag of Pie Ivy Gen out, but the one with all the assets is $60. And you can get the free one, but you just can't do the same thing. And I really think that the Blender Ivy looks 2 to 3 times better than 2 to 3 times gooder than the Bag of Pie Ivy, the free version. Now, obviously, the pay one on the Blender market's insane, and I don't think anything that Baga has done has not been amazing. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. But let's go ahead and build an Ivy here, and I'm actually gonna provide my blend file. I'll knock the scatter off of here so you guys can do your own scatter. And just kind of keep it super simple. So let's get started. All right, so the first thing I want to do is simplify the scene. And so I'm just going to turn off all of my IA scatter stuff, and I'm going to hide the sky and the water plane. I'll hide the camera too, it's kind of obtrusive. Let me just delete that. Kind of start fresh here. So obviously anyone knows how to import FBX files. Oh wait, you don't? Okay, well let's go ahead and do one. So let's do an import. Whoa, come back here. Let's do an import of an FBX. Now I'll provide this building for you guys so you can check it out. It's a pretty cool one. I just modeled this myself. I used Grid Modeler, just keeping it very simple. It's like a space alien apartment building, if you will, and I kind of had that in another model I was working on. And I want to put it right here, so I'm just going to move it over here and then rotate it on the Z a little bit. And now I can take another top view. Don't make anybody throw up there. That's like a roller coaster ride. All right, I would say that's going to be pretty good. And I think for this one, I'll actually scale this one down a little bit and kind of have it looking up, because we want to have some depth to our scene and have like a little bit of extra meaning. So Control-Alt-0, it's going to be pretty good. And I'll make sure, yeah, the lightning is in here, and I'm sure the clouds will be just fine. Now for the immediate thing, and I had 3 cups of coffee today and I cannot talk. I'm going to put the Ivy generator on this. Okay, this is just static in Blender. So if you jump over to Edit and Preferences, type in Ivy, check it on. Make sure you save it if it's something that says save. Otherwise, it's on autosave. Pick a point where you want the Ivy roots to start. Any point is good, but it really needs to be somewhere on the bottom. Press N for the end panel, go to Create, and under here you'll see the Ivy generator. Now from here, all the presets are actually pretty good, but we're going to kind of play around with this thing. So go ahead and click Add New Ivy. And actually, to make it easy on yourself, it looks like it kept all my presets. So if you want to just punch these in, because it's tedious to learn, right? So the max Ivy length, I put it to 1.5. The Ivy size, 0.01. The float length, the max float length, static, I didn't change that. The adhesion length, I didn't change that. But the weight, I did. All right, so the primary weight is going to make the Ivy kind of grow up. I've got it at 0.47. The random weight is going to randomize it and kind of wrap it around. I've got that at 0.17. The gravity is obviously going to pull the branches down. That's 0.97. Now the adhesion weight is how much it's going to actually stick to the surface, and I've got that at 0.19. Then I've got the branch probability at 0.04. And the Ivy branch size is at, and this is important because you don't want it to be too big. You try to keep the number of polys down. 0.0009. 0.0009. And then I've got the leaf size at 0.004 and the leaf probability is at 0.38. Now, if you click add new Ivy after entering all of that in, it may take a little while because, you know, you're generating it all at one time. All right, so it generated, it looks sort of similar to the first one I made, but not really. So let's adjust this a little bit. Now, if you actually are going to change anything on here and you click off, like I just did, because I just had to click off for some reason, you're literally going to have to delete it and start over. But the good news is, oh, I know why it doesn't look right, because I didn't have the cursor in the same spot as last time, but that's okay. So select the object you want to put the Ivy on, put the cursor somewhere down where you want it to start, click add new Ivy. And so yeah, there's a couple of rules with the Ivy generator inside of Blender. I really wish they would work on this thing, and I'm just telling you, it's good. It's good. You can make a lot of cool things with it. Just if you click off, the update Ivy thing is gone. That's super annoying. But what you can do is you can mess around with the length. You don't have to keep this, hit enter here, because I think it stops at 1 right there in the size setting, so you'd have to put it at like 0.9 if you want to get that a little bit lower. And some of these you can oversize. It's not a big deal. There we go. So I just brought it down a little bit, the max Ivy length. Now the leaf size is kind of big, so I'm going to click on the leaf size and bring that to 0.003, and then I'll update the Ivy. And you can do that with any of these settings. Maybe a good idea, slow PC, do them one at a time. And I'm going to bring that down a little bit more, 0.002, and I'm going to hit enter there, and just carefully left click on the update Ivy. Shouldn't take too long, even on a slow PC. This is pretty decent. Alright, so that actually looks pretty good. I'm going to click off of it now because I don't need any of that. You can mess around with the different settings as much as you want. You can bring the weight up, bring the branch size down, but if you bring a size up, you know, you're stretching it out, you're going to have to change the leaf size and or the branch size and the branching probability and the leaf probability accordingly. So if you bring one or two of those up, bring the other two up, the leaf probability and such. So if you bring up the branching probability, bring the branch size down a little bit. And if you bring the leaf probability up, bring the leaf size down. You know, just whatever you want, however you're going to get it to work out just right for you. Now here's the cool thing. If you don't have Blender Kit installed, go get Blender Kit. You absolutely have to have it for this. And I've just checked on the Blender Kit asset library, which pops up here. It also pops up in the end panel. I don't use it in the end panel. I just use it up here. So number one, we're going to go over to the models and we're going to hit enter and type in Ivy and hit enter. Now right over here is where it should pop up. It's called the Ivy Particle Preset. Just drag that and drop it into your scene somewhere next to what you're working on. I'll get rid of that for now. I'm going to grab this top view and I'm going to explain what's going on here. So I'm going to Z swipe over. You can see you've got a particle system with a bunch of different leaf sizes. The big ones are going to end up with the particle system being a little bit darker, grayish, deadish. The progression from medium to small leaves will be the young, fresh leaves, which are going to be at the ends of the branches, where the bigger ones are going to end up near the base of the vine, which makes a lot of sense. Now, how do you get this to work? Let's go in and select just the leaves, not the actual vine. Select the leaves, come over to your particle system, click the plus sign, and add in a new particle system. And right away, you can click and get the Ivy preset and plug that in. Now, if you've got the list down here on how to see how many faces you have, and we're going to need to find that. And one of the easiest ways is just to come down here, and this is actually a status bar down here. It tells you a bunch of different things that are going on. So right click on that, and it's just showing the Blender version right now. You can show system memory and or scene statistics. And that's one of the things that we're going to want to know. And currently in this scene, I've got 2,497,280 faces and or quote-unquote polygons. And if you would like to individually get the count for everything, whether it be the verts, faces, tells you the tries, and it will tell you everything else, the object info. What you can do is, like on the leaves, just click tab, go into edit mode, and you can see we've got 12,875. So I'm going to tab back over and I'm going to put 12,875 and hit enter. And now I've got the amount of leaves that are supposed to be here, because that amount actually is representing the amount of emitters that was on there. Alright, so there's two things you want to do right away, because this is a big, huge, cluttered up mess. Number one, I'm going to come down to the render tab under the physics. And if you have the show emitter, turn that off. Now if you come down to the viewport display, it says show emitter, and you can turn that off as well. And I had my leaf plane selected, so I turned those off instead. But you could turn these off, and then after you've done that, you can go to the render settings and maybe scale that down a little bit. All right, once you've got the particle system attached, you can actually come over here and just delete that. We'll select the leaves, go into edit mode, and I do have the emitters on for this, and select A for all. And what we want to do is get those leaves to organize, and the particle system is going to do that for us automatically, but we do have to do one step, which is not necessarily something you would just know. So we want to average island scale. And what that's going to do is it's going to organize all of the leaves in here for us. So then after I do that, I'm going to pack the islands. And this could take a little while depending on the PC. And now that it's done that, we can see how this has arranged itself, and it's going to be much more apparent once we come back over here. I'm going to jump back out of edit mode, and now with these leaves selected in the particle system, I'm going to go back in and turn off the emitters for the render and for the viewport, and now I can actually bring the scale down. I think 0.1 is pretty good. Maybe you could just bring it a little lower, like 0.05, whatever you want to do. And I'll just jump over to rendered view for a moment, and we'll take a look at this. And there you go. Your leaves should look something like this. Now I did leave my my trunk size actually a good bit too big, but it's okay. It's all trial and error, and the first time I did it was perfect, right? So here we go. What you can do now is come over to the material tab, and you can type in Ivy and hit enter. And when you do that, you might have to hit the little winky eye there to get this to pull up. What you'll have is the Ivy stem. It's a preset color that is designed just for this. So you could do a little drag and drop, and then put the little white pointer stick there on it, and give it just a moment to render out. And voila, you've got a pretty good looking ivy. Branches on this are pretty massive, but still looks pretty good. Now with those things in the scene, and I would say you could actually take the ivy and hide that, and hide the branches, and take the statue here, and I'll just bring it out. You can see I put a texture on it that looks really, really beat up, and it's actually a very, very good texture. And I know there is a gap down here. This is just how it is. You could do a bridge edge loops if you wish with that model, because it's an FBX you can download, don't forget that. And it's going to be on my Gumroad. So what you can do here is, I've got the concrete old damaged, and I got that from Blender Kit. So if you type in concrete old and just hit enter, it should just pop up, and then you'll find the concrete old damaged in here. There's old musty tiles, we don't want that. Oh, I forgot to take the word ivy out of there. And let's fix that. Concrete old, and here we go. So concrete old damage right here, you can just drag and drop that directly on top of the Statue of Liberty model. And as long as you've got it unwrapped, it should pop up pretty nicely. Now for functionality's sake, I'm just going to move back out of the viewport. I know that was kind of brief with the ivy, but it's really a trial and error thing. Just understand that when you come in here to it, you click New Ivy, you don't lose your box, don't click in the viewport, just click the update or click inside of here. You don't click anywhere else. And then the branch size, obviously you want to change that. Then the particle system's free in here, and there may even be a couple more. And it looks like inside of there you can actually change the leaves. There's like 2 or 3 different options. I just kind of went with what I had here. And then you're going to end up with a scene like this. And something with a render like this. But you're not going to get exactly what I've got unless you do the final step. The final step is going over to the world properties, come down to volume. I'll close off surface, and I put a volume scatter on here, and it really makes a huge difference. So if I actually remove that, and we'll go into rendered view and just look at that for a second, like ultimately that's not too bad. And I'm going to adjust some of this, the lighting and the volumetrics. But if you come over here and just add a volume scatter, and then come down to the density, and you don't really want the density at 1. Maybe you do. You want to turn all your lights up, very high values. I think like 0.1 is a good place to start to add the extra volumetrics, and then you end up with something like this. And increasing the volume scatter level is going to kind of darken your scene, make it look a little bit more spooky. All right, and I've got one other tip if you guys want to make your light look a little bit different and kind of stand out and pop. One of those things you can do is come over to the area light, and you can actually change it to a rectangle, from a square / rectangle to disc or ellipse. I prefer the disc, and then obviously you can scale that down and then pump it up a little bit to like, I don't know, 500 or so, or whatever your scene is calling for, and make it look like a portal coming through. And that mixed with the volumetrics at 0.1 ends up looking pretty good. If you want to drop that to 0.05 or something, you can definitely do that and bring the volumetrics down. And ultimately what that is going to do for you is create some really cool down-facing shadows. And so who knows what's coming out of here. Maybe this is taking off and you can add some extra effects to that, and it looks pretty cool then. Anyhow, I'm going to render this actual image out and put this up on the community page so you guys can see it. And if that's what you want, then that will be exactly what you get. And as always, everyone, thank you for watching. If you got any questions, hit me up in the comments below. Also, I've got a link to my Gumroad with the building files here. And don't forget to smash that subscribe, smash that like button on the way out. And I'll see you guys in the next tutorial lesson.